In this video, I'll cover factoring quadratics when a is greater than 1 using the X and box method. There are two main other methods for factoring quadratics when a is greater than 1, and I have videos on both of those methods as well. One of those methods is the AC method with grouping, and the other is the AC method with division. So you should probably look for the video that covers the method that your teacher uses for consistency. Thanks for choosing Math with Caroline. Let's get started using the X and box method. Our first example is 3x squared plus 7x plus 2. This is in standard form of ax squared plus bx plus c. So a is equal to 3, b is equal to 7, and c is equal to 2. Using the X method, which is sometimes also called the diamond method, we are going to multiply a times c in the top, and we're going to put bx on the bottom. So in this case, we have 3 times 2 is 6x squared for the top and 7x for the bottom here. So we multiplied our a value times our c value. 3 times 2 is 6x squared, and then 7x goes down here. Now we want to find two numbers that multiply to 6x squared and add to 7x. So what are those two numbers? Those two numbers are 6x and 1x. Those multiply to 6x squared and add to 7x. So then we create our box to factor. We need a 2 by 2 box. Now this part, the 3x squared, goes in this top left corner, and this 2, our c, goes in the bottom right corner. The two numbers that we found, 6x and 1x, go in these boxes, and the order does not matter. Now we're ready to factor. Our factors will be written here and here. These two numbers will multiply together to make this box. These two numbers will multiply together to make this box. These two numbers will multiply to get this box, and then these two to get the 2. So what two numbers will multiply to get 3x squared? 3x and x. So the order in which you write these matters because of this number here. This also has to be a factor of this number. So 3x times what will equal 6x? 2. And then for this piece right here, what number times x will give us x, and what number times 2 will give us 2? 1. And this is all positive numbers, so we can put our pluses there. So our factors come from here, but I do want to just double check this to show you that you need to check it before you write down your factors. X times 3x is 3x squared. 2 times 3x is 6x. X times 1 is x. 2 times 1 is 2. So then you know that you've written your factors correctly if all 4 boxes work. And then your factors, you can write them in any order, is 3x plus 1 times x plus 2. And that is fully factored. Or you could have written it as x plus 2 times 3x plus 1. That order does not matter as long as the x stays with the 2 and the 3x stays with the 1. But if you multiplied 3x times x, you would get 3x squared. 3x times 2 is 6x, plus 1 times x is x, and that would give you your 7x, and 1 times 2 is 2. So you should always FOIL or multiply your factors back out to check your answer and make sure that it's factored correctly. Let's look at another example. For 3x squared plus 7x minus 6, we'll make our x or our diamonds, and we'll multiply a and c together to get 3 times negative 6 is negative 18, x squared, and then we'll write our bx, our 7x, on the bottom. So we need to find two numbers that multiply to negative 18x squared and add to 7x. What are those two numbers? 9x and negative 2x. Those multiply to negative 18x squared and add to 7x. So now we're ready to make our box. In this top left corner, make sure that you write down ax squared, our 3x squared, from our original problem. In the bottom right corner, it's our c value, which in this case is negative 6. Then write down your two numbers that you found here in these boxes, and the order does not matter. So now we know to get 3x squared, we'll have 3x times x. I'm going to put the 3x here and the x here, and that is important because 3x is a factor of 9x, but it's not a factor of negative 2x. So I wouldn't want to put the 3x here because 3x times what would equal negative 2x? Well, that would be a fraction, and we don't want fractions here. So we want this to be a factor of this one. So then, what times 3x equals 9x? 3. What times x would give you negative 2x? Negative 2. So we can quickly check. X times 3x, 3x squared. 3 times 3x is 9x. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. So since all four match, these are the correct factors. So we will write it in factored form. 3x minus 2 times x plus 3. And that is in fully factored form. Now let me show you, if you would have put these numbers in the opposite order, what would have happened. So we still have our 3x squared here, and we still have our negative 6 here. But what if I would have put negative 2x here and 9x here, and flip-flopped these two spots? So then, to factor this, I would want my 3x on this side and my x on this side, because I know that this 3 is a factor of 9. And I know that this spot times this spot has to equal this spot. And so I would want the 3x here instead of on the top. But you're going to see that I still get the exact same factors. So what times 3x equals 9x? 3. And so positive 3. And what times x would give me negative 2x? Negative 2. And so my factors are still x plus 3, just like it was here, and 3x minus 2, just like it was here, but just in the opposite order, which is totally fine, because when I write it in factored form, I can see that if I FOILed this, if I multiplied this out, I would still end up with my original quadratic equation. Now let's look at another example where we have to factor out a GCF first. When you look at this quadratic, you can see that there is a greatest common factor of 3 with all of these terms. That is something you should always be looking for when you're factoring, is a GCF first. So since you can factor out a 3, 6x squared divided by 3 is 2x squared. negative 3x divided by 3 is negative x. Negative 9 divided by 3 is negative 3. So we will use the AC method, the x in box method, with this quadratic here, and when we're finished factoring this one, then we will just put the 3 in front when we're done. So let's make our x or diamond with our ax squared at the top, which in this case is negative 6x squared, and our negative x here, and find two numbers that multiply to this and add to this. What are those two numbers? Negative 3x and 2x. Those multiply to negative 6x squared and add to negative x. So we're ready for our box. Since this is what we're factoring, we want to make sure we put 2x squared in this top left box, and then our negative 3 in this bottom right box. Then we'll put the two things that we found, our 2x and our negative 3x. I'm just lining them up like this because I feel like that might be a little bit easier. But again, the order of these doesn't matter. But if we put the 2x on top and the x here, those will multiply to get 2x squared, and this is a factor of this. 2x times 1 would give us 2x. And then we need negative 3 here, and this is going to be a plus. So we can always double check. X times 2x, 2x squared. 1 times 2x is 2x. X times negative 3, negative 3x. 1 times negative 3, negative 3. So we have our factors, 2x minus 3, and x plus 1. Now, of course, we can't forget about our 3 that we factored out in the beginning. So this 3 will need to come in the front here. And then we are done. Again, if you multiply this back out, then you can see that it should equal the original quadratic that you had. Let's do one more. In this example, you can see that these are big numbers, and so if you can factor out a greatest common factor first, it really helps to create smaller numbers. So what's your greatest common factor? 10. And so you can factor out a 10, and you'll have 10y squared minus 17y plus 3. And this will be a much easier quadratic to factor than this one, as long as you don't forget about this 10 and put it in the answer at the very end. So we're ready for our x, and we'll put 30y squared, ac squared, and negative 17y here. So what two numbers multiply to 30y squared and add to negative 17y? Negative 15y and negative 2y. So then we're ready for our box. We're going to put our 10y squared here and our 3 here, and then our negative 15y and our negative 2y. What two numbers multiply to get 10y squared? Well, we have options. So let's look at what we have here. We have a negative 2y, so we want 2y here. So then we'll have 5y here to make 10y squared. And 5y times negative 3 is negative 15y, and 2y times negative 1 is negative 2y. We'll double check it just to be sure. 2y times 5y, 10y squared, negative 3 times 5y, negative 15y, 2y times negative 1, negative 2y, negative 3 times negative 1 gives us a positive 3. So then we know we factored correctly. And then, to make sure that we end up with this original, if we multiply this back out to check, we need to bring down this 10 to the front. And that is factored completely. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, and comment. See you soon.